A suspect is in custody as authorities investigate a murder earlier this afternoon.
I like them hot, the ones that don't tell me to stop. Eat this, swallow the gum, and they know how to pop. I need a project, bitch, a hood rat bitch, one that don't give a fuck and say she took that bitch. She a don't get with it, she go Bible, then she know.
At 11:48 a.m. on February 1, 2025, in Copperas Cove, Texas, emergency responders arrived at a home on Tanner Drive and found 31-year-old Shasmine Clack lying wounded. She was a devoted mother of 5, known for her warmth, her energy, and her dedication to her children. Within hours, she was pronounced dead at Advent Health Central Texas. But the person police say pulled the trigger wasn't a stranger. It was 27-year-old Alonzo Ezekiel Hunter, the father of her youngest child, a man she once called family. Hunter was taken into custody that same day at a nearby hotel, arrested without incident, and charged with murder. A justice set his bond at $500,000. Shasmine left behind 5 children, including one too young to understand that life would never be the same. Her older siblings speak of her memory, her kindness, her generosity, her bold style, and the hole she leaves in a family now fractured by violence. The Copperas Cove Police Department says the investigation is ongoing. No additional details have been released. But in a quiet Texas town known more for army families and weekend routines, a mother is gone, and a man accused of betrayal stands accused of murder. If you believe stories like this need to be heard, not buried, hit subscribe now. This isn't fiction. It could be your block on the news tomorrow. Shasmine Clack lived the sort of life many in Copperas Cove knew well. She was 31, raising 5 children, balancing work, school events, and weekend routines. Her family described her as energetic, generous, and deeply committed to her kids. Her friends say she had a contagious laugh and a big heart, someone you wanted around. Family interviews shared how she would literally give the shirt off her back to help others. Her older sister, Clack, told local reporters, "The kids, that's what mattered." She loved her kids. It was all about her kids. In Kingsville, where she grew up, and in Copperas Cove, where she settled, Shasmine was respected not just as a mother, but also for her kindness, always ready to lend a hand, offer encouragement, or just listen. Neighbors remember weekend mornings full of laughter, birthday parties arranged with love, and endless support for community events. She was the sort of woman who showed up, not to be seen, but to make sure others were seen. But even as she moved forward in her life, worries lingered behind her smile. Birds don't show their nests, and sometimes trouble brews where least expected. That ordinary world was the last thing to vanish the moment violence came knocking. She lived just like many of us, kids, dreams, routines. And now, her voice is gone. If you think stories like this deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe button. Don't scroll past like she never existed. Shasmine Clack's life shifted the moment Alonzo Ezekiel Hunter, the father of her youngest child, began appearing in her world again. Although the two were no longer together, Hunter's presence lingered, not quietly, but with a tension that neighbors and family sensed. At just 27 years old, Hunter was already known in Copperas Cove. Records show he was out on bond for a previous assault charge that was scheduled for court days before the murder, and occasionally appeared at places where Shasmine was known to be present. According to family accounts, Shasmine had tried to put their past behind her. She was devoted to her children, focusing on work and community. But in recent weeks, friends say she seemed tense. Her sister, Clack, who spoke to local reporters, described Shasmine as someone who protected her space, and yet, she was increasingly on edge. Though no official reports label Hunter as harassing, multiple local posts and comments on community pages suggest that he tried reaching out, calling, showing up, asking questions. Shasmine's social media entries became sparse, interactions minimal, as though she was shrinking back. Friends noticed changes. She didn't talk much about social plans. She canceled dinners. Even weekends at the park with the kids seemed calculated. It was like someone was watching. This wasn't a random encounter, this was the behavior of someone who hadn't let go. Over time, that behavior deepened. Witnesses later told investigators that on the days before February 1st, Hunter was seen near locations Shasmine had been, including a motel outside Copperas Cove. Rumors circulated that he believed she was seeing someone new, a local rapper who had caught her interest. Those whispers reached the investigators too. As the clock moved toward that Saturday morning, the tension became a quiet figure at the edge of her life, the ex who wouldn't fully step away, and the ex she refused to let control her again. If you're still not subscribed by this point, why? Go ahead, drop a comment explaining why this mother's story doesn't deserve your attention. We'll wait. In the months after her split with Alonzo Ezekiel Hunter, Shasmine Tashawn Clack made choices that centered on her future, and her children's well-being. She focused on her 5 kids, ages ranging from toddler to teenager, and returned to the routines she knew best, school drop-offs, weekend games, and family dinners. Her community remembered her as someone who stood out for the right reasons, a neighbor ready with a kind word or a helping hand. Friends say Shasmine seemed to regain some peace. For a while, she laughed again. She made plans, birthday parties, little outings, even a few nights out. She began talking to a new friend, a local underground rapper whose name circulated quietly in Copperas Cove circles. Sources close to the family say Shasmine found someone she connected with, someone who seemed different. Yet even as those moments brought her joy, something changed. Friends noticed she pulled back more than before. She canceled plans. The posts on social media tapered off. She didn't name names, but those close to her said she looked over her shoulder more. She seemed uneasy. Family interviews painted a picture of a woman trying to move on, but someone else wasn't ready to let it go. Police records revealed that Hunter was already facing an assault charge at the time, and was out on bond, set at $15,000, with a court appearance scheduled for February 3, just 2 days after the murder. He'd been following his court process, but his bondsman status meant he was still free to move around. Friends and neighbors later recalled that Hunter had not faded from Shasmine's life entirely. He drove past her residence on Tanner Drive, was seen near locations she'd been, and in some cases asked questions, about where she was, who she might be seeing. That pattern continued in the days leading up to January 31st, when something happened, a conversation, an argument, or a suspicion, that pushed him further. Everything went quiet that night. The calls stopped, the cancelled outings came more frequently, and by morning, Shasmine wasn't going to be around any longer. But on the night of January 31 st, something pushed Alonzo over the edge. This is where the darkness starts. If you're the kind of person who wants to look away, unsubscribe from real life. But if you're ready to face it, hit subscribe and stay. Because her truth deserves witnesses. At approximately 11:48 a.m. on Saturday, February 1, 2025, Copperas Cove police officers responded to the 900 block of Tanner Drive following reports of a gunshot victim. Upon arrival, they found 31-year-old Shasmine Tashawn Clack suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Emergency responders immediately began life-saving measures before rushing her to Advent Health Central Texas in nearby Killeen. Despite efforts, Shasmine succumbed to her injuries, and was later pronounced dead. She left behind 5 children, her youngest still too small to grasp that she would never come home. Witnesses described a scene that shocked even longtime residents, whose peaceful neighborhood had suddenly become a crime scene. Family members shared their grief with local news outlets. The kids, that's what mattered. She loved her kids. It was all about her kids. Within hours, authorities identified a suspect, 27-year-old Alonzo Ezekiel Hunter of Beaumont, the father of Shasmine's youngest child. He was taken into custody at a nearby hotel without incident and charged with murder. A judge later set his bond at $500,000 during his arraignment just the next day, on February 2. As investigators continue to gather evidence, they've confirmed Shasmine's children are now living with relatives. The Copperas Cove Police Department released a brief statement offering condolences and emphasizing that the investigation is still active, with no further details available at this time. Imagine those kids growing up, Googling their mother's name, hoping people still care. And then seeing the world scroll by without a click. Be better. Subscribe, for them. It took just a few hours. Just a few hours after the shooting on Tanner Drive, investigators had identified a suspect, 27-year-old Alonzo Ezekiel Hunter of Beaumont, the father of Shasmine Tashawn Clack's youngest child. Police converged on a Comfort Suites hotel in Copperas Cove, where Hunter was located and taken into custody. The arrest was quick. No chase. No struggle. Just calm efficiency. Hunter was booked on a murder charge. A $500,000 bond was set by Justice of the Peace F.W. Bill Price the following day. Inside the booking room that afternoon, Hunter displayed no visible emotion. According to law enforcement, he was cool, collected, almost distant, as though he'd expected this would happen. There's no record of resistance or argument. Meanwhile, detectives combed through witness statements and surveillance footage. Neighbors confirmed that Hunter had been in the area on prior days. Witnesses recounted seeing him near locations Shasmine had visited. He was familiar with her routines. Investigators also noted that Hunter was due in court Monday, February 3, on an assault charge, bonded at just $15,000 at the time. That court date loomed just 2 days after the murder. There were no immediate public statements from Hunter or his legal team. No denials. No explanations. He had already planned to be in Copperas Cove for court, yet that routine turned into evidence. Police released a statement offering condolences to the family and asking residents to avoid speculation as the investigation continued. Across social media, messages poured in, some defending Shasmine's memory, others reflecting on mental health, domestic violence, and warning signs. One relative wrote, "This motherfucker just shot my cousin and left the scene, I am fucking furious. If you have info, reach out to Copperas Cove PD." As investigators pieced together the timeline, a grim picture emerged, a man who may have felt betrayed, watching the woman he once claimed loved to move on. A mother taken in broad daylight. A community grieving. Would you have seen the signs if you were in her shoes? Drop a comment. Let's talk about red flags people often ignore. In the days following that Saturday in early February, the Copperas Cove community, already reeling, came together to remember who Shasmine Tashawn Clack was beyond the tragedy. A GoFundMe was quietly launched by her family to help cover end-of-life expenses and support her 5 young children, now left without their mother. A balloon release was held on Sunday, February 9, near Tanner Drive and Anderson Avenue, friends and neighbors bringing pink balloons and candles to the site where her life was taken. People came to grieve, to honor her memory, and to acknowledge the weight of what was lost. Her older sister, Chantel Clack, spoke with reporters, describing a mother who had lived for her children. The kids, that's what mattered. She loved her kids. It was all about her kids, she said through tears. It's just a lot, starting all over without their mom. The local police department issued a brief statement, sending condolences to Shasmine's family and urging privacy as the investigation continued. They confirmed her 5 children are being cared for by relatives while the legal process unfolds. But for a family that depended on stability, Shasmine was their anchor. Now, they have birthdays to plan without her guidance, tough days that her hugs would have softened, and questions that no one can answer. 5 children, and no mother to tuck them in. Still not subscribed? That means you've watched almost half of her story, without lifting a finger to make sure these cases stay visible. At this point, if you're not subscribed, ask yourself why. 5 children now go to sleep without a mother. No bedtime kisses. No last-minute school prep. No birthday cakes baked with love. No one checking the homework, or warming up dinner just right. What they have instead, are questions. And a hole where their childhood used to be. This isn't just a family grieving. This is a whole city asking, how did this happen? And how do we make sure it never happens again? Copperas Cove is a small city in central Texas. Population just under 40,000. It's the kind of place where folks still nod at each other in the grocery store. Where people keep an eye out for each other's kids. But on January 31st, 2024, this town changed. And it changed fast. When the news broke that Shasmine Clack had been shot and killed, allegedly by the father of her child, Alonzo Ezekiel Hunter, it didn't feel real. People described her as joyful. Always smiling. Protective. A woman who had finally started putting herself first again after years of emotional strain. She was doing better. That's what everyone said. She was finally doing better. In the days after her death, tributes began pouring in on Facebook. Friends posted old photos of girls' trips, birthday celebrations, and pictures of Shasmine just being a mom, at the park, at the school recital, or simply cooking up a storm in the kitchen. There were prayers, yes. But there was also anger. A deep, burning anger that someone who claimed to love her, had taken her away. Her sister launched a GoFundMe for the funeral. And within hours, donations came flooding in. Not just from Texas, but from people in New York, Georgia, California. All asking the same thing, why is this still happening? Why are we still losing women like Shasmine to domestic violence? The numbers are not just numbers. In 2023, over 200 Texans were killed by intimate partners. According to the Texas Council on Family Violence, nearly 3/4 of those victims were women. Most were shot. And in the majority of cases, there were warning signs. Now people are looking back at Shasmine's story and asking, were there signs? And if there were, who missed them? Community leaders began organizing. Candlelight vigils. School fundraisers. Panel discussions on domestic abuse and trauma. At one point, a local pastor stood up in front of 300 people and said, "We can't keep praying after the funeral. We need to show up before the next one." It wasn't just words. Advocates began pushing for stronger protective orders, better training for police, more intervention programs for men with histories of violence. But a lot of folks asked, what about the guns? Alonzo Hunter wasn't supposed to have a weapon. And yet, he did. That's a reality victims across Texas have come to know too well. There are gaps in enforcement. There are delays in court. And by the time the system catches up, sometimes, it's too late. People in Copperas Cove lit candles for Shasmine. They wrote messages to her children. But behind those quiet acts of love was a much louder message: this shouldn't have happened. Shasmine Clack should be alive right now. She should be getting ready to take her kids back to school shopping. She should be arguing with her teenager over chores. She should be taking silly selfies on Instagram and complaining about gas prices like everyone else. Instead, her name is now another headline. Another stat. Another mother gone too soon. And for those 5 children, this is their reality now. Their mother won't be there at graduation. She won't meet their future partners. She won't be at the hospital when they welcome their own babies into the world. They've lost more than a parent. They've lost their sense of safety. So the question now isn't just what happened on January 31st. It's what are we going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again? Because one day, one of those children is going to Google their mom's name. They're going to search for answers. What will they find? Will they find silence? Or will they find that the world actually listened? Should there be tougher laws around repeat abusers? Should it be harder for people like Alonzo Hunter to get their hands on a weapon? Scroll down. Leave a comment. Someone else is reading it too. And your voice might be louder than you think. At the end of the story, questions remain: was it really about cheating, or something deeper? Shasmine Clack was far more than a case in a news report. She was 31 years old. A devoted mother of 5. A sister, a friend, a neighbor. She had survived heartbreak. She had left a relationship. She had started rebuilding. Her ex-boyfriend, 27-year-old Alonzo Ezekiel Hunter, was arrested within hours of the shooting, arraigned the next day, and held on a $500,000 bond. Some reports suggest jealousy after she started seeing someone new, but investigators have not confirmed a motive. Whatever it may have been, it ended with a mother gone, children left behind, and a town shaken. Texas is facing a broader crisis. In 2023 alone, more than 200 intimate partner homicides were recorded across the state. Most involved firearms. 3/4 of victims were women, and too often, there were warning signs before the violence. Shasmine's story follows a pattern that's become all too common: an ex who wouldn't let go. A breakup. A rise in tension. And suddenly, violence. Behind closed doors, behind the headlines, countless women live with fear. Gun laws, protective orders, court delays, they all play a part in what happens next. Survivors and advocates across Texas are pushing for stronger enforcement and better systems of support. Now, 5 children are navigating life without their mother. Grandparents, siblings, aunts and uncles are stepping in. A GoFundMe was set up within hours. A vigil was held. Pink balloons released into the cold sky. But for the family, the loss will echo for years. Will those children remember their mom with joy? Or with the weight of unanswered questions? And will the world remember her story, not just as another statistic, but as the life of a mother who deserved to be safe? In a few minutes, this video will end. You'll close your TV or phone or turn off the screen. But in Copperas Cove, that day didn't end when the video did. 5 children don't get their mother back when we hit pause. If you think something needs to change, if you believe her story deserves to be heard, get involved. Start with simple steps. Go to your local domestic violence center. Talk to your representatives. Tell someone's story instead of saving it to watch later. Because silence gives those stories power. Let us know in the comments, do you think the system failed Shasmine? What needs to change to protect others? Was Alonzo a monster? Or just a man who couldn't handle the idea that he didn't own her anymore? Power is quiet, until it isn't. Until it shatters 5 lives and leaves a mother bleeding in front of her kids. And all because he couldn't let go. Now I need to ask you something real. If you've made it this far, if Shasmine's story kept your eyes on the screen and your heart in your throat, don't just scroll away. This video took dozens of hours to research, write, edit, and verify, because the truth deserves that kind of care. These stories don't get made in a day. But they do get forgotten in one, if no one speaks up. So before you go, tell me, really, what's stopping you from hitting subscribe? Drop a comment. Be honest. If this mother's story didn't move you, what will? And if you thought this one was haunting, wait until you hear the next. A case so twisted, even seasoned detectives couldn't agree on what was real. These aren't just stories. They're warnings. They're reality checks. They're proof that monsters don't live in movies, they live next door. Don't miss the next one, because the next name we speak might be someone from your town. Someone you know. Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications. Be the witness these families no longer have.